Welcome to My Life in Israel podcast, where I speak the truth with people about finding a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict while combating anti-Semitism, anti-Israel, and anti-Zionist propaganda, and rant about Israeli politics and life in Israel. I also throw in some Judaism to spice things up. Welcome to My Life in Israel. Today I want to talk about Israeli politics. Some of you may know that Israel is now going through another round of elections, and I want to talk about why that is and explain to you how the Israeli government works. So, first of all, Israel has a government based upon a parliamentary system, much like in Europe, because they came from Europe. So there's more than two parties. There's several dozen parties that range all the way from the left to the right. Most Israelis are somewhere in the middle. The largest party is the Likud party, which is the center-right, headed by Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi. And the second largest party is on the center-left, which is the Yesh Atid party, headed by Yair Lapid, which is the current interim prime minister. And then there's smaller parties to the left of that and to the right of that. So I want to describe to you what those parties are. The major parties to the left is either the Labour Party, which is mostly focused on workers' rights, the economy, living conditions, that type of thing, but they're more socialist in their ways to solve these things. And then to the left of that is Meretz, which is what we consider the progressive left, comparable to what's in America. They are focused on making peace with the Palestinians at any cost, giving up land, doing all these things to do that, the two-state solution. They're actually more anti-Israel and anti-Zionist, even though they might not think so themselves. But the way they want to go about their agenda is no different than all the anti-Israel and the things that you see. The BDS, they support the BDS. They support they're protesting with the Palestinians against Israel. So yeah, they're not really for Israel. They're for the Palestinians, and they think they're doing good, but they're really not. And so it's kind of bizarre to me that there's actually Jews here in Israel that are still thinking this way. But that is what it is. They're a very small minority, but they still have a voice. To the right of the Likud are the religious parties, the Haredi parties. The Haredi parties don't really want power themselves. They just want to make sure that their interests are funded and they have money budgeted for yeshivas and the rabbinutes, and to make sure that the religious status quo is kept as far as how Israel keeps Shabbat, how Israel keeps the holidays, and so forth, and to not degrade them to more secular policies. And then to the right of that is the religious Zionist party, who is mostly focused on the settlers and the Israeli-Arab issue, foreign policy, how to deal with that, how to deal with Gaza, and those types of things. So we're in a situation that we're in is because the way the government is set up is because no one party can get a majority. There's 120 seats in parliament, in the Knesset, and you need a majority of 61 to form a government, a coalition. And because there isn't one party that can do that, they have to make agreements with other smaller parties to form a government. And that seems to be the problem, is because now there's Arab parties also, I should say. The Arab parties are headed by Arab Israelis that are Muslim, that are actually anti-Zionist and anti-Israel. And just like the Meretz party, they support the Palestinian agenda, just like the PA in the West Bank does. They have supported terrorism. They don't condemn it. And so no one in the other parties wants to form a coalition with them, even though the Arab Israeli population now makes up 20% of Israel. And And so they do form a significant block of voters, and yet nobody wants to form a coalition with them. And we see what happens when they do, when Naftali Bennett just tried to form a coalition with one of the Arab parties, and we see what happens. So now, but then also, nobody wants to form a coalition with Bibi specifically, and Bibi is the leader of the Likud still, even though he has a lost support on the right. There are parties on the right that don't want to form a coalition with the Likud specifically because of Bibi. So because Bibi is still in power and he won't give up his power, even though he's been through a trial and indictment, he doesn't want to give up his power. So we're still stuck in the same situation, and nobody else in the Likud can get enough support to lead Likud to replace Netanyahu. So this is the situation that we're in. So we're going to be in the same situation again with these elections. I don't see an end to this unless Bibi steps down. And I would prefer Bibi step down because I don't like Bibi. I used to like Bibi, but Bibi is not what he seems to be. For all you people outside Israel who are like, oh, yay, Bibi's great. Bibi is not so great. Bibi has not fulfilled his promises. He says a lot of things, and then he doesn't follow through. Bibi wants to appease the rest of the world at the expense of the people here in Israel. He is a globalist, and he was all for the lockdowns, the forced vaccines. People forget about that. And he's going to go along with the UN agenda, and nothing's going to change. Okay, so why are we in this position? We're in this position because nobody in Israel has a solution to change it. Everybody keeps voting for the same parties over and over again. It's insanity to me. I don't understand why people are still for Bibi. I know he seems like he's the best of what's available, but even that is not working. Bibi is not working for Israel. He wants to keep the status quo, and he's willing to sacrifice Israel's best interest to do that. He consistently bows to Hamas. He gives Hamas money. He gives the PA money, even though he says, he condemns all the violence, the terror attacks, and yet he says a lot of things, and yet when it comes down to it, he concedes and appeases, just like the left. He does things that actually would be considered left instead of right. He doesn't stand up to Hamas. He doesn't stand up to the PA. He doesn't stand up to Jordan. So we continue these rounds of fighting the terror attacks, the rockets. And I thought Bennett would change that, but he turned out not to change that. And so there doesn't seem to be anybody willing to change the status quo. The only people that are willing to change the status quo are to the right of Bibi, the religious Zionist party. And the Israeli people, they don't have enough support, the religious Zionist party. They're gaining support. They're gaining support now because the people that were for Bennett are going more right to the religious Zionist party. So they're gaining support now, but the people that were already to the center left or to the left are going to stay to the center left and to the left. And so unless the right can get their act together and unite against the left, there is not going to be a way to get out of the situation. And the religious parties can't unite. The Haredi parties can't unite, which goes against their own interests. I don't understand for the life of me why they can't unite. The Haredi parties can't even unite because there's Sephardic Haredi, there's Ashkenazi Haredi. They can't unite. It's insane to me. And then the Haredi parties can't unite with the religious Zionist parties because the Haredi parties don't even consider the religious Zionist parties valid. And again, it's insane to me. And the only way I can explain it is that we're still stuck in this exile way of thinking. I don't even know what to say. That's a whole nother issue to go into. But if the religious parties could unite, they would form a huge bloc that could exert some power and get some change done. But the Haredi parties don't want to do that. They don't want change. They don't want to change the status quo. They want to stick with Bibi. And the Haredi parties were all for the lockdowns. They were all for the forced vaccines. They don't understand what's going on with the globalist agenda. So nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. Bibi is a globalist. Bennett turned out to be a globalist. Everybody who's in power now seems to be a globalist. There doesn't seem to be a way out of the situation unless Bibi steps down. Either Bibi steps down and lets somebody in Likud lead so they can form a right-wing government, or the whole entire thing is going to collapse on itself. And either we form a new type of government outside of this parliamentary system, or there has to be somebody that steps up and is able to change things. I think it's somebody more to the right, but I don't think the rest of the Israeli people are ready for that. It has to be a lot more worse. People don't want to give up what they have, and they don't want to change. And the whole entire system is going to have to collapse. America is going to have to collapse because they think they can rely on America. And as long as they have America or whatever to back them up, they will keep doing what they are doing. So until that changes, we're going to keep going to elections. So tell me what you think. What do you think should happen in this next election? So until then, like, comment, subscribe, share, and stay tuned because I have a lot more to say.
Thanks for listening to My Life in Israel podcast. Follow me on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for non-podcast videos. If you enjoyed the podcast, like, share, comment, and follow me on Spotify and other podcast apps so you never miss another episode. Support my work and support Israel by making a one-time or monthly donation or become a subscriber to get access to exclusive content. The links are in my profile and description. And stay tuned because I have a lot more to say. Am Israel High.